It was wedged behind the rotten attic floorboards, bound in brittle twine and wrapped in damp newspaper smeared with something brown and flaking. The second I touched it, a cold rush jolted through my fingers, like plunging my hand into icy water laced with rot. The mask was grotesque, carved from some dark, knotted wood, its antlers jagged like broken ribs. The eye holes were too wide, too deep, and when I leaned in, I swore I heard faint whispers like breath through wet teeth. The air around it thickened with the coppery tints of old blood. Something was wrong with the smell. It wasn't just mildew. It was decay sour and sweet and clinging to the back of my throat like bile dot. As I lifted it from its resting place, the temperature dropped. My breath turned visible in the shaft of moonlight slicing through the cracked ceiling. Behind my eyes, something clicked. A vision, a clearing, ringed in fire, figures in burlap robes circling a kneeling man, his face pressed into the dirt. The antler mask being nailed to his skull. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The attic walls creaked like they were breathing. I blinked and the vision vanished. I told myself I imagined it. Just stress, mold, spores, the kind of panic that comes from isolation. But the floorboards groaned. Louder, the nails in the beams wept rust. For a moment, everything went still. The wind stopped. The buzzing in my ears ceased. I almost laughed. Then something scraped across the ceiling, claws dragging bone across plaster. A laugh, dry and hollow, echoed between the rafters. Grandma used to whisper about the horned ones in these woods. A cache, not a relic. As I turned to leave the attic, the door slammed shut behind me. The mask was no longer in my hands. It was on my face. Asterisk, the cabin groaned with every step I took. Its floorboards warping like tired lungs exhaling under my weight. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, curling at the corners, revealing veins of black mold that seemed to pulse. The air was syrupy, thick with the musk of mildew, wet bark, and the faint metallic stench of rusted nails on it as it dried blood. Each breath left a film on my tongue, bitter and coppery, like licking an old coin dipped in bile. I set the mask on the stone mantel, hoping distance might dull the pull it had on me. The antlers, jagged and uneven, scraped the wood above like they were reaching up, growing slowly when I wasn't looking. By candlelight, they cast twisted shadows on the walls, not reflections, but movements. Shapes that didn't match the angles of the antlers, shapes that moved even when the flame stood still. I found a bundle of old sketches in the drawer of a rotting cabinet, crude drawings of masked figures dancing in firelight. A forest god, they called it. Nelra, the horned hunger. The people here used to leave offerings during the red moon teeth. Hair, blooding, a clearing known as the Split Grove. A warning was scrawled beneath one of the drawings. Never wear the vessel, never feed the roots. I started repeating that line to myself, like a charm. It helped for a moment. The shadows retreated. The creaking stopped. I thought maybe I'd passed some test. I even laughed, hollow and wild, like the sound might banish the dread. Then the walls began to bleed. Slow, at first thick, black rivulets oozing from nail holes and wood seams. The blood tasted real. It tasted familiar, and upstairs, the floorboards creaked against nightly this time. I wasn't moving. Asterisk, it started small, just a flicker at the edge of my vision. It's the mask, resting on the mantel, would tilt slightly when I looked away. Swear, it was facing one way, then turned back and see its antlers pointing somewhere new. Once I found it on the floor, the eye holes staring directly at me like it had crawled closer. I blamed the wind. Maybe the vibrations from my footsteps, but the wind didn't whisper my name. Floors don't bleed where the mask had rested that night. I began to taste metal in my mouth. It wasn't imagined. I woke to warm wetness on my tongue blood, thick and briny. The smell followed me, heavy and persistent, like rusted iron mixed with rotting leaves. I began washing my hands compulsively, but no matter how much I scrubbed, they still felt wrong, like something unseen had touched them, like I had touched something alive and still twitching. I found an old diary under the floorboards of the bedroom. The pages were warped from moisture, stained with something brown that smelled like turned meat. The entries were frantic scrawled warnings from someone else who had worn the mask. They described dreams of roots growing from their spine, of being pulled into the earth, limb by limb, while the forest laughed. The more you resist, the deeper it feeds. One page read. Some nights, everything went quiet. The air grew still. No whispers, no footsteps, no blood on the walls. I'd feel hope a fragile bubble. Maybe the curse was weakening. Maybe I was free. But then the air would shift. Cold, damp, sharp, with the stink of old bones. The mask would be back on the mantle, freshly polished, wet with something. And last night, Kit whispered a word I hadn't told anyone. Mother. Asterisk, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The mask was whispering, even when I wasn't near its low, gurgling sounds that slithered under door frames and coiled around my ears like wet fingers. It didn't use words at first, just noiseless clicks like antlers tapping bone, the rasp of breath through split wood. Then came the dreams. I saw the ritual again, clearer this time. Villagers in deer-hide cloaks kneeling before a massive tree, shaped like a man. Its bark oozed black sap. Its face was carved, not grown, the same twisted face as the mask. I began digging through the cabin's cellar, where the air was colder, heavier. The stone walls dripped with condensation, but the drops were red. I tasted one out of desperation, thinking it water. It wasn't. The copper tints of blood clung to my teeth. Beneath the floor, I found bones small, arranged in circles, teeth scattered like offerings. Its carvings lined the walls in old dialects I didn't recognize. One symbol repeated again and again, the antlers. A tattered book lay under a stone, bound in rawhide and sealed with a deer tooth. Inside were local tales legends from a time before maps. Nelra, the hungering god, they called it. Not born of man, not of beast. It came in winter, when the first frost cracked the trees and hunger was strongest. The elders carved the mask as a vessel, a prison, but it needed a lamp, a voice, a face. I told myself I'd burn it. I even doused it in kerosene, but when I struck the match, the flame died in my hand. Cold rushed through the room, extinguishing every candle. The shadows swelled. The mask sat untouched in the dark, and in the black silence, I heard it clearly. You were always meant to wear me. Asterisk it. Spoke again that night, not in dreams this time, but through the walls. The whispers were no longer vague or distant. They pressed close lips against my ear, saying my name in a voice that sounded like mine if it were dragged backward through leaves. I covered my ears. Still, I heard it inside my skull, humming like a second heartbeat. Okay? The mask lay across the room, but I felt it on my face, its cold bark texture, its damp leather straps tightening around my head with every breath I took. I hadn't put it on. Not this time. I stumbled toward the mirror, needing to see. My reflection blinked before I did. The mask wasn't on my face, yet my reflection wore it. I screamed, but my voice was muffled, as if buried in soil. I clawed at the glass. My fingers left streaks of something dark and sticky. Blood, or sap, or both. My mouth filled with the taste of bile and old meat. I fell to my knees. The cabin shuddered. The beams above groaned like something massive was shifting within the roof. Walls bulged and flexed, wooden panels bending as though breathing. I ran outside, gasping for clean air. For a moment, the night was still. Moonlight filtered gently through the trees. I almost cried in relief, but then the woods began to whisper, too. The trees leaned closer. Roots shifted beneath my feet. From between the pines, I saw them, dozens of them. Figures in antler masks, silent, watching, waiting. I turned to retreat, but the cabin door had vanished. In its place stood a black doorway, pulsing softly like a wound. I felt the pull again, like gravity, like hunger. And then the voice returned, deeper, layered. Let us in. I don't remember walking through the black doorway. One moment I was outside, surrounded by those masked figures, and the next time was inside again. But the cabin wasn't the same. The wood beneath my feet pulsed faintly, like skin stretched over something living. The walls bled thick, tar-clad sap that smelled of rot and old coins. Every breath tasted like copper and mildew. A high-pitched whine settled in my ears, just beneath hearing range, constant like an insect trapped inside my skull. Buzzing against bone, I found a hidden compartment behind the fireplace, revealed when the stones shifted on their own. Inside was a bundle of damp cloth wrapped around a shriveled hand, claws fused with twigs and sinew. Beneath it lay a crude drawing scratched onto stretched hide. It depicted a man kneeling before a tree, crowned with antlers, his eyes hollow, mouth sewn shut. Above him, scrawled in jagged black ink, was the phrase, "The first voice must never speak again." I laughed when I read it, not because it was funny, but because my own voice was gone. I tried to call out. Nothing came. My throat burned, as if something had been scraped away from the inside. Panic clawed through my chest, but I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. Even my tears came out thick and dark, like syrup. The cabin gave me silence then. For an hour, maybe more. No whispers, no movement, just stillness. I thought maybe it was done. Maybe I had passed some kind of trial. Then the floor opened beneath me like a mouth. I didn't fall far, just into the basement. But something was waiting, skittered just beyond the candlelight. Something with too many limbs and wearing my face. A cat. It was whispering my mother's lullaby. Asterix, the thing with my face, didn't move at first. It just swayed gently in the shadows, like a marionette suspended on invisible strings. Its eyes, my eyes, were wide and bloodshot, pupils blown to black holes. I couldn't breathe. The air was thick with the metallic stench of copper and something else, wet fur, burnt hair, and decay. My tongue pressed to the roof of my mouth and tasted blood, like I had bitten down too hard on fear itself. Beneath my palms, the floor pulsed like living flesh, cold, damp, breathing. I backed away, and the candle flickered out. Total darkness. Then click, its limbs twitched. The whispering returned, not from its mouth, but from the walls, the ceiling, my skull. Voices layered on voices, some chanting in a tongue I didn't understand, others screaming prayers. The thing lunged. I bolted. I found a door in the far corner of the basement. It wasn't there before. Behind it, an old storage room lined with shelves of rotted ritual items, fetishes carved from bone. Jars of long-clotted blood in a brittle parchment nailed to the far wall. I held my breath and read. The antlered god was never meant to be. Called, the mask binds him to flesh. Remove it, and he returns to the forest starved. A gust of air blew the parchment off the wall, revealing a scratched diagram beneath, a circle of ash, antler shards, and salt. A containment sigil. My hands trembled. Maybe this was the key. Maybe I could trap it again. I scrambled to recreate the circle on the floor. Silence. Then laughter. Not mine, not human. The walls began to drip again, not sap this time, but bile. Hot, putrid, and bubbling. My reflection appeared in the puddle. Maskless, It smiled. He never left. He's wearing you now. Asterisk. I tried to claw the mask off my face. My fingernails scraped against rough bone, but it wouldn't budge. It pulsed, warm and wet, like it had fused with my skin. Every tug sent white-hot agony lancing through my skull. I screamed at least. I thought I did, but the sound was swallowed by the walls. They were bleeding now, thick rivulets of black-red, sludge dripping like tears, sizzling where they touched the floor. The air was thick with the reek of rotting meat and scorched copper, stinging my eyes and burning my throat. I gagged, tasting bile and something else, something alive, in the flickering light. A vision struck me. A man, centuries ago, forced into the same mask during a village ritual meant to silence the forest god. He had been a butcher, a sinner, chosen by lots. The mask sealed the god's hunger for a time, but the villagers grew careless. They let the rituals fade. One night, the god woke, and now it wanted to wear again. I stumbled back, dizzy. The mask throbbed against my temples, whispering in a voice like rusted metal dragged across stone. "Let go," it said. "You are the door now." For a moment, the house went quiet. No laughter, no bleeding. I stood frozen, breath shallow. Maybe I could find a way out. I reached for the door behind me. It vanished. In its place stood a mirror, cracked, warped. My reflection stared back, except it wasn't mine anymore. The eyes were hollow, glowing faintly amber. The mouth twisted into a grotesque grin beneath the antlers. I touched the glass. It was warm, and then it blinked. Not me, not a reflection. Something on the other side. To take my place, asterisk. Tried to run, but the floor beneath me pulsed like flesh, squelching with every step, resisting me like it wanted to hold me in place. The smell of burning antlers filled my lungs, sharp, woody, and choking, while every breath tasted of old blood and something older, fouler, like curdled milk left in a corpse's mouth. The whispers returned, louder now, forming half sentences in forgotten tongues. "K," and each word burrowed into my ears like worms. "Wearer, gatekeeper, K, vessel." I stumbled to the staircase, hoping praying it might lead me out. The steps groaned like dying animals under my weight. Halfway up, I slipped. My hand gripped the banister, only to recoil. It was alive, warm and twitching like muscle under skin. I screamed and kept climbing, blind with panic. On the landing, I saw a door open by itself. Warm yellow light spilled out. I stepped inside. It was normal. A tidy room, wood-paneled walls, a fireplace flickering. I wept, but the flames hissed. Suddenly, flaring green. Shadows twisted across the walls, sprouting from the corners, gnarled and twitching. A book lay on the mantel, bound in stitched leather. I flipped it open with shaking hands, its pages of ink and blood. A hunter's journal from the 1700s. He had found the antler god buried beneath the peat, skull still breathing, still whispering. He tried to contain it, built his house around it, ordered the ritual. One must always wear the mask, else the god sees again. I dropped the book. My hands were no longer mine. They twitched on their own, clawing at the floor, scratching the god's hand into the boards. My mouth moved, but made no sound. I was losing time, losing self. From behind me, the mirror cracked louder. In this time, something stepped out of it. Asterisk, it wore my face, but its eyes black. Endless voids, swirling with antlers and ash weren't mine. They never had been. I backed away, trembling, bile burning up my throat, the air thick with a copper tang of old blood and burnt fur. The mirror it crawled from bubbled like tar, whispering with 100 voices, all speaking at once, each one echoing my thoughts before I could even think them. My mind fractured. I couldn't tell if I was hearing them or remembering them. The The room bent with the weight of something unseen. The walls pulsed, leaking a thick, brownish red sludge that smelled of rot and iron. My fingertips brushed the surface slick, warm, alive. The entity me, but not moved closer, tilting its head with a slow, unnatural jerk. Its antlers scraped the ceiling, trailing black mold behind. For a moment, everything stilled. I hoped it was over, that maybe I had dreamed it. Then the ceiling cracked, and something above screamed. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. Visions exploded behind my eyes. I saw the original ritual, the villagers in wolf pelts, chanting in circles of bone, forcing a cursed soul into the mask to seal the god beneath the earth. The wearer would become the prison. They failed, okay? The god fed on madness. They tried again, decades later, and again. Each time, someone new wore the mask. Now, it was me. I begged, out loud, for help, for God, for anyone. The house only groaned, amused. My voice echoed back with delay, warped, as if something else was rehearsing it. I was still alive, but not myself. I looked in the mirror again. There were two of me now, both wearing the mask, and one of them smiled. Then the candlelight went out, plunging me into breathing darkness.